Hello everybody, I'm Marty Owings and it's Tuesday, April 23rd, 2013, and this is Capital Conversations. I'm happy to be joined by two lawmakers today. We have with us DFLer, Susan Kent, and also GOP State Senator Roger Chamberlain, who joins us tonight. I appreciate you guys both taking the time out to be with us on the program tonight. As always, we invite you, the viewer, to send us a tweet or a question online. You can do that at MN Capital News or just find us on Twitter at MN Cap News. As springtime, we hope, has mercifully made its final appearance here in the state, things are in high gear up here at the Capitol. So let's talk about the unveiling of the DFL Senate's new tax plan. Should we start with you, Senator Kent? Where are we at on that? It sounds like 9.4% for married filers with income over $140,000. That'd be an increase. And single filers over right about $80,000, another pretty substantial increase for them. Talk about why the DFL went in that direction.
Well, I think you have to look at it as a whole package, because I think what you've seen, and I do have to say, we had a brief conversation about it yesterday. It was released this morning, and I've been focusing on a bunch of other issues, so I have not had a chance to really dive into the details of it. So I'm going to speak on this on a pretty top-line basis, and forgive me for that. But what I think this bill does is it is part of an overall balanced package that tries to put us on a good, solid, sustainable fiscal footing, get out of the cycle of deficit after deficit, recommit to a few things that we know are important to our future, our economic future, like education, trying to take care of a few things. I come from a private sector background, did some work in economic development, and I think it's great that we're looking at lowering the corporate tax rate to make us more competitive. We're looking at lowering the overall sales tax to make us more competitive. And again, this represents a balanced approach. And just a quick note on the specific question about the income tax. It's the top 6% of the population that would have their income taxes increased. And I think arguably that is typically a part of the population that has done relatively well over the recession. And when you couple that with some of the other cuts that we're making, we're also looking at substantial cuts in property taxes. I think this works out to be a balance while taking care of some very important investments that we need to make for our state's future.
Well, Senator Chamberlain, it represents $1.1 billion tax hike. That's with a B, and our figures have it at 7%, not 6%, but maybe it's rounding of the numbers, okay. Senator Kent. But in any case, the GOP's been pretty critical of the DFL's work on taxes in the budget this year. What were your thoughts with this morning's unveiling?
Well, Senator Kent is right in one respect. This is a balanced approach. It's a balanced hit on every Minnesotan. This is a serious, serious problem. $2.3 billion is the actual gross increase in new revenue with their bill. $2.3 billion, and that does not include $500 million in new transportation taxes and an estimated $600 million in new fees. Their total new revenue package is over $3 billion. You cannot take $3 billion out of this economy, out of the private sector, and hope to grow it. In the last 2 years, we had a lot of heated debates up here, but nobody came to me like they have this year and said, we cannot afford to stay here. Business after business after job creator has come up to me and my colleagues said, you're going to put us out of business. Because you add on top of all that the regulatory burdens, the Obamacare, minimum wage, they are not going to be able to compete. So the difference between last session and this session is two things. One is that the last session, we created a budget that didn't increase taxes and that decreased the deficit and has been increasing revenue collections and has been good for business and for jobs. And the other difference is that 2 years ago, nobody came to me and said, we can't stay here anymore. We have to leave. And third piece is that historically, if you go to other states that have done this, they never collect the revenue that they say they're going to collect. This budget is going to hurt every hardworking taxpayer and family in Minnesota, and we are not going to collect the revenue that they estimate, and I would dare say we're going back to deficits. This is not a recipe for economic growth. This is not opportunity, it's simply overreach. This is the wrong direction to go.
Well, let me ask you, Senator Kent, if you were just a layperson who arrived here from a different country and you suddenly appeared, watched the debate going on up here, you'd think Republicans only talk to the business people and Democrats only talk to the poor and downtrodden. What's going on? What are you hearing from the business community, and what are they a little bit concerned about some of the taxes, as Senator Chamberlain mentioned?
Well, I actually am a former business owner and worked in the private sector my entire career. We talk to the business community a lot. One of the things that I keep hearing from them over and over again is, we have significant workforce demands and we are losing ground in educating and preparing our workforce for the future. So that's why we are making significant steps towards economic development and investments in higher education that both improve affordability and access for our students, get them on a solid path so it's not just, here, try college, see how that works out for you, and then don't finish. No, we're going to work with them and we're going to give them pathways to their best future and their best careers and the financial support to do it. And in addition, then we're going to have programs with MnSCU that are going to include specific job training and equipment for that really reaches towards the real workforce needs. We have about 150,000 jobs, some people say right now, that are not filled because we don't have the skilled workforce to do that. These are the kinds of investments we're going to make in higher ed.
Yeah.
Those are the kind of investments we're going to make in early childhood through 12th grade, and those are specifically the kinds of things that the business community has been asking for.
Well, I'd like to address and challenge you on a couple of things, because I think Senator Chamberlain pointed out, there's some pretty significant tax increases when you look at them in their totality. Now, some of them will have to go to conference committee and be broken down, and you guys will decide what's actually going to come. But the DFL is going to own this, and I understand Senator Bach has said, well, I saw one tweet in effect that I'd hate to be him next year when I have to explain to the voters what happened. I mean, has the DFL overreached on the taxation now? I mean, or are you just trying to catch up with what you feel were unnecessary cuts by the Republicans in past sessions? I mean, what does it seem like an overreach to you in terms of taxes? How are you going to explain this to your middle-class constituents who are going to get hit here?
I'm from Woodbury. My district is Woodbury and part of Maplewood and Oakdale and Landfall. That is a pretty middle-of-the-road district with a lot of conservative people in there that I have spoken to, business owners, and people who work in the private sector, plenty. And nobody wants their taxes raised, of course. But they also recognize, and I've heard this repeatedly, that we need to be straightforward and honest in our budgeting. No more gimmicks, no more games, no more kicking cans down the road. Let's make sure we're being straightforward about it.
Fair enough.
And they recognize that we're losing ground. As many know, especially this time of year, this particular year, people do not usually move to Minnesota for the weather. But they have moved here. They have raised their families here because this is a great place to raise your family and to get a good education. And they bring their companies here because their employees want to raise their families here and because there's a good qualified workforce. We are losing some of that competitive edge. And again, my background is marketing and economic development. The best thing we can do is protect the brand that is Minnesota. And yes, part of that brand historically has been some concerns about high taxes, and that's why I think this overall approach is pretty wise, because there is balance. We do bring down some of these rates that make a difference, but spread them out across the board so that it's not borne just by a few.
Well, I want to give Senator Chamberlain a chance to respond to that, but why is it Republicans and Democrats can't get together on this stuff? Is the majority too wide? I mean, do you need a thinner margin of more balance, or are we lacking independents or moderates up here at the Capitol that you guys can't find compromise where the Minnesotans don't feel overtaxed, but they don't want to see their poor people and sick and elderly thrown out in the street?
I think there's always areas of compromise, and we compromised a lot in the last few years. Otherwise, nothing would have gotten passed. But I'd like to reemphasize that our economy was improving. Our deficit was decreasing. The governor used part of our our budgeting process in his budgeting estimates and projections. And these taxes hit everybody. Over-the-counter drugs, personnel services, office services, clothing. These taxes will hit every Minnesotan. And so it's balanced in that way. It hits everybody. And if we talk about competitive edge, North Dakota, Iowa, South Dakota, all of our surrounding states are going to be doing much better. You cannot take $3 billion out of the private sector, put it into the government hands, and redistribute it. What this government and what this budget is doing is redistributing everything. They're picking winners and losers. Different counties, different cities, different businesses. They arbitrarily went through and picked what areas of taxes they would increase in sales. There's no logic, no reason, no rhyme or reason to this process. It is going to be detrimental to Minnesota families and businesses. Again, the businesses have been coming to us saying, we can't afford this. They sit in the committee and say, you'll put us out of business. During some of the hearings down here, we had a lot of businesses come down here and testify. Now, that didn't happen before. We are facing something completely new and drastic here. This is unprecedented. This is a historic, sweeping change that we're doing. There have been no efforts to reform and this government process.
Get to you in a second, Senator Kent, but I want to challenge you on something there, Senator Chamberlain. When you said there's no rhyme or reason, you guys, Republicans, sit in the same committee as the Democrats, so you guys are a part of the process as well.
Yep.
If there's no rhyme or reason, eventually you guys have to own it as a legislature.
Yep.
I think that makes sense to people. What about that, no rhyme or reason? What do you mean when you say that?
Well, the budget itself, if we want to create jobs and attract businesses, I haven't talked to a single person or business who says, oh, I'll come to your state if you increase my taxes by 40%, or you increase my regulatory burdens, or you make me increase my minimum wages, or you pick somebody else for the tax credit, not me. I will give the Democrats this. The DFL admits that tax credits and incentives work because they're doing it all over the state. Not in the whole state, but they're doing it for selected areas where they're reducing taxes and giving credits and exemptions to attract business into these different areas in the state. Well, I would say what's good for those areas should be good for the entire state. The DFL understands that lower costs are good for business, lower costs are good for Minnesota families, they're good for jobs and good for our future and they're good for our schools. But they don't apply it around the state. They're picking winners and losers throughout the state. So in one sense, the pain is going to be felt and balanced by everybody. But on the other side, they're picking winners and losers. So the rhyme and reason, we sit in committees, but the governor and the DFL have complete control, and they run the show.
Senator Kent, where's the broader thinking here? Where's the thinking that you guys are a team, you work together? Minnesotans want that. They know you represent different ideologies, but they don't want you to be so entrenched that the state doesn't get its job done in a fair and equitable way to all the people, businesses, and others involved. Well, what about the big thinking that you guys together can do a lot more than you can divided?
Well, I think that the door is completely open all the time, and there have been a number of cases where I've been involved where I've seen compromise happen around committee tables quite a bit. You talk about there are no moderates. I personally want to take issue with that. I very much consider myself to be a moderate, and I think my voting record so far reflects that. And there are a number of us, and many of us were moderate Democrats who came in because, frankly, I believe our voters across the state, many areas, not universally, of course, but they said, we've tried this divided, we've tried this with the Republicans in charge, and now we're going to try it a different way. And the mandate that I've heard from my constituents, that I hear all the time, is common sense. And it is about focusing on our strong, solid fiscal future, and that means investing in the short term and in the long term so that Minnesota is positioned for growth. And we can pick and choose a few specific aspects of the tax plan and this particular bill, but what I'm seeing as an entire process, it's so funny, when I was first elected as a freshman, one of the questions I kept getting is, so, what's going to be the outcome?
Did you guys come in together?
No, Senator Chamberlain was here.
I'm a big 2-year veteran.
Oh, that's right.
He's a long timer.
I forgot about that. But you weren't here when the Republicans were in the majority in the Senate.
I am a true freshman, but I came in to be a part of the process because I wanted to hear the.
God bless you. Haven't been jaded yet, or you?
I hope not.
Still,
I hope not. I want to hear the
gotcha.
testimony. I want to give people a chance to have their input, and I want to hear the discussions and the debates. And for example, when Governor Dayton's first proposal came out that included the business-to-business tax, I was frankly not in favor of that. I did not think that was in Minnesota's best interest, and I was happy to speak up about that, and we've seen that change. You know, I think you're seeing the process evolve. It's not done yet, but what I am seeing is moving down a pathway towards some balance, towards just a commitment to a strong future that is fiscally focused.
I appreciate that. Let me specifically talk to you about this. The tax, looks like the tax on clothing was thrown back in, and maybe this a cigarette tax, which a lot of people see as somewhat regressive in nature. And then an inflation trigger on business property taxes, which may not be so unpalatable to the Republicans if there are cuts and balances other places. But this clothing tax, I think that really rubs people the wrong way. That one does. Yeah.
I hear that, and I appreciate that.
Think that'll survive conference?
You know, I'm not going to place bets, but I am going to say that, you know, back to Senator Chamberlain's comment that there's no rhyme or reason. This is, to me, an example of solid tax policy.
Yeah.
Right now, Minnesota is, depending on how you count it, one of 4 or 9 states in the country that doesn't tax clothing. And so, you know, that doesn't pose that much of a competitive disadvantage to us.
Okay.
We are providing a credit for middle to lower income families so that they can get that back, basically.
Well, it sure helps us. I mean, you know. What about the excess of like $500? If I'm going to go buy like a tailored Italian suit, okay, tax me. I can afford that. But if I'm you know, my wife will get mad if I say
But again,
where I bought
it's part
this,
of the overall package.
Yeah.
We are lowering the overall tax rate. So the idea is that for a family, yes, you're going to be spending some tax on clothes, but you're lowering.
Though, Senator Kent.
Well,
you
know,
I don't know where what's
tax reform. Tax reform isn't glamorous. Nobody said it was. Nobody said it's glamorous. But we do want to die. I mean, the reality is, if we're serious about this, and I came here to be serious about this. I didn't come here to score political points. I came here to make some serious differences. I'm a housewife from Woodbury. I've been a stay-at-home mom. I'm focused on education, and I'm focused on the future for our families and our kids.
Well, you're a state senator as well. So
well, now I am.
A lot to do. Yeah.
Now I am.
Right.
But I came here to have some of these complicated conversations because these are complex issues.
Well, Senator Chamberlain's going to jump in there. So,
you know, again, you cannot, in all honesty, you cannot say we've reduced rates and increased taxes by $2.3 billion. And we all know that when you increase the cost of something, that impacts people. The people come to you and say, well, I can't go there because it's $10 extra, or I'm not going to buy, or the milk prices went up. Now, here's another complicating factor. You raise all these taxes, $3 billion in taxes and fees. And so you go and you pay for a service. But now, when you pay for gas, you're paying the extra sales tax. They hide stuff on the wholesale level, so it doesn't show up on your receipt. That's not clear and transparent. That's gimmicks. That's not honesty. And so you pay your extra tax through the gas pump, but then when you buy your loaf of bread, you're going to feel it in that because they're adding that tax on the transportation costs. You're going to see the extra fees for licensing and taxes that all those companies pay. People like the tax, and by the way, the corporate income tax is not going down. The rate's going down, but they're collecting another $63 million from them. They're closing loopholes, they call them, but these businesses said, look, we can't do business here. So it's not transparent. They're putting taxes behind the screen. You can't raise $2.3 billion and $3 billion in taxes and say, hey, we're reducing the burdens. This is going to harm people because they know the cost of what those higher costs do to their family.
Well, let's move on. We got a lot to cover, and we only have a very short time. So let me ask you guys a little bit about. Bonding came up. Any words about bonding and why that has to happen in a non-bonding year, Senator Kent?
Well,
not the old time is ripe. The interest rates are down. Talking points.
Well, that might actually be true.
All right, fair enough.
And I will say, certainly sitting in the Transportation Committee and listening to, I think, just about every senator. I don't know that you were one of them.
Not on transportation.
But I would say that just about every senator in the Minnesota Senate has come through with serious needs about commerce and about public safety in their districts, asking for bonding. There are real needs out there.
Fair enough. Senator
Bonding?
Chamberlain? No, I was going to give you a different one.
Please, that's fine. Go ahead.
More red meat, I guess. What about the Viking Stadium Bill 2.0 or whatever? We're hearing that the pull tabs aren't coming in right, the electronic not generating the revenue you need, and yet we've got these needs. Senator Kent, senators are showing up, others asking you for projects, and we're giving money away to stadium owners. Is that working out?
Well, as you know, I and many others, and there were Democrats who were opposed to the stadium deal. I was never opposed to a stadium. We had other plans. I proposed a plan. I dropped a bill. We discussed it. We debated it. And as you know, that we did not agree with the financing at the time. We said that the financing was not solid. That was the whole bill was unethical and immoral, and it was financially unsound. And it's turned out to be that way. And every dollar. The first question I got asked by Metropolitan State folks when they were up here. I'm an alumni, and the first question they asked when I stood up is, every dollar that comes out of the general fund to pay for the Viking Stadium, which is going to be up to $40 million a year, is a dollar that doesn't go into the education, K-12, higher ed, or roads. So it's a real problem, and what we've been asking is investigate it, make sure it doesn't happen again. This was a 100% mistake, and it shouldn't happen. We should know why that happened. I could give a guess, but we shouldn't do it again. Secondly,
don't leave viewers hanging. Let's hear the guess.
Well, the reason
they
knew they wanted a stadium. It didn't really matter what they had, because eventually we were going to be locked into a deal.
Right.
So that's what they got. They had something on paper. We got locked into a deal, and now if we try to change that, the Vikings say, "Oh no, we're suing because it's detrimental reliance. You have a legal contract with us now."
Right.
So they'll be bound to it. And the state's not going to let their bond rating go, so they're going to pay it. Mm-hmm. And there are other ways to pay for the stadium. And the governor hasn't said much lately. I'm assuming he's negotiating with the Vikings to find some other way to do it. We also have seen that other stadium deals across the country have panned out the way we said. Most of these other teams are paying for their stadiums, and Ziggy Wolf is paying nothing. All right, fine. Let's find a different way to pay for it, because every dollar we borrow is about $1.50 over 20 years to pay back. So we got a big obligation. We have the citizens are relying on us. They trust us, and we should find another way to do this. And I think Senator Kent would agree with that. I think they would agree. Senator Kent would agree that we have to find a different way to do this. And there are other ways to do it that work. There's several other ways to do it.
Well, Senator Kent, what about this Vikings thing and the fact that we should remind folks so they know, you articulated it pretty well, Senator Chamberlain, but it was a bipartisan deal. It was passed by Republicans and Democrats last year, and Republicans weren't alone in their criticism of the pull tab deal. The Democrats stood up and had some criticism as well. Why did it go through, darn it, and then why are we stuck with it here?
Well, I'm going to point out I was not here for that. I was watching that on my television like everybody else.
Understood, yeah.
So I don't know the inside story of how things got to be the way they were last year.
Fair enough.
But I will say I do agree with Senator Chamberlain in the sense that, we need to make this work for Minnesotans.
Yeah.
I do believe there is definite benefit of having the Vikings be here, and but we need to not pay too much.
Agreement. See, we can't agree.
Well, you guys are laser focused on the talking point, on the message tonight. You guys are laser. I
don't think Senator Chamberlain and I are known for being stuck behind talking points.
No, you guys.
Reserved.
Well,
he frequently calls himself a contrarian in committee.
Well, I appreciate you bringing that up. Believe me, it's hard to sit through a half-hour show when all it is talking points. But let me ask you guys this: you both are involved in education, K-12. How's that going up here? And then, one final question. We'll go to our tweeters, but tell me, how's K-12 going? What can Minnesotans expect in terms of that? We'll start with you, Senator Kent.
Well, I'll come back to what I said initially. I think it's really telling that the business community is as much of an advocate for some of these improvements and reinvestments in education as anybody. I think all-day kindergarten looks like something that is going to happen to some degree. I've got a bill in there that includes some flexibility for local districts in that one. More investment in early childhood, because we know that we've got to take care of the achievement gap, and some of that does need to start early.
Sure.
Some important reforms, I think, in testing and preparation for college and career. It goes back to what I was saying earlier about higher education, and I think we're looking at some big things happening here.
Makes sense.
There's some things in the K-12 bill that are good. but there's some really, really bad things.
Well, which ones are you going to highlight?
There's some good things, recovery schools, and
All right.
part of education and tax is the equalization fix.
Sure.
It's been fixed. It's been broken since the early 90s. So we're getting some relief and some fix on that and the formula so that these poorer districts will get some relief. So that's a good thing. One of the bad things are the delay on the teacher evaluations. I don't like the federal control through the race to the top and no child left behind waivers, but they do require us to implement this evaluation system, which every other company and business has. It shouldn't take 2 years and $10 or $20 million. The other bad thing is they're removing the grad standards, the grad test, like they did with the math test. Is absolutely beyond comprehension why we would do that. There are successful schools in this state, charter schools, and there are success stories across the nation of where they take at-risk kids, get them in these charter schools, and they not only turn them around at the local level, but they have national recognition. We can do this. There shouldn't be any excuses. The teachers should be able to pass these tests. They should be able to, the basic skills test. They should be able to pass evaluations. And we should keep quality in the classroom.
Well,
and we should make families and kids the center of this. Families and kids are always the first thing. And these programs that work across the nation and in this city are the ones that do just that. We do not need to do what we're doing.
I would like to address what he's speaking about in terms of the grad test.
Yeah, because I don't know how you reconcile that with wanting better workforce people if we're removing
The
those.
business community is against that 100%.
Well, what they are for is the new kind of testing system that we are implementing. And what this does is it starts earlier. It helps identify whether kids are on trajectory to graduate at the right level as early as 8th grade. And then if they're not, we have the opportunity to intervene and help give them the support they need so that they can graduate college and career ready. Okay. That, as opposed to now where we catch them at the end of their high school career and say, sorry, you didn't make it. Yeah. We need to do better. This is better testing. This is based on college type standards as opposed to the grad test right now, which is not aligned with anything that any college is looking for. This would be more aligned with the ACT. This is what colleges want, and this will help them be prepared, and it'll help our kids know what they need in order to prepare for their future.
One last thing for you guys on K-12. Looks like the governor would continue to shift out K-12 a little bit more, which is a very concern, because I think the DFL came out of the gate saying, we're going to take care of this, no more kicking the can down the road. How did you feel when you heard Governor Dayton say that? Were you
I agree with Governor Dayton on this one.
You do?
My position was not that we need to pay the shift back right away. My position was that doing the shift in the first place, and frankly, it's in the year that it happens is where it hurts. I've spoken to school districts, I've spoken to leaders, I've spoken to educators, administrators. Everybody is pretty much in agreement that we're on track to get that paid back in a reasonable amount of time. And rather than taking a big chunk of change and trying to pay that off right now, that our better plan is to reinvest in things like all-day kindergarten.
The school shift was a big issue last election, and it should have been. I didn't agree with the school shift. And the shift has been going on for years, long before I got here, and DFL and Republicans alike have done it. And it's borrowing from the schools. The Democrats ran in a platform, they're going to pay back, they promised to pay back the shift. And their bill right now we paid back the shift 86%. Yeah. Our budget, our financing, paid that shift back to 86%. It's normally at 90. It's paid back to 86.5, and their bill takes the normal payment down back to 85. So they're saying we're not going to pay that extra 5% back. The only reason we have a 10% shift in the first place is for accounting reasons. This K-12 bill, there are good things in it, but it is unfair to the kids. This is unfair to the kids to lower the standards and lower the expectations in the classroom and with the teachers. We have hardworking professionals out there. They want to teach. The kids can learn, and we shouldn't take any excuses otherwise. And this does not advance us down the road. Early childhood, I'm not a big proponent of it. There's a lot of reasons, but that's an hour and a half debate, so we'll leave it up. But there are good things in it, but this bill does not take us down the road to improve K-12 standards. It just doesn't.
Well, this is a place where we will just have to fundamentally disagree, because I really do believe that these are the steps in the right direction, and that these are the steps that are going to make a difference for our kids and our workforce.
Well, I guess voters will continue to decide what works and what doesn't, but it seems like an opportunity this session where the Democrats came in and they're going to take things over and change it, to put that back on the agenda. Not that the Republicans had taken it off, but it seemed like
To put what back on?
Educate K-12 education back in terms of the shifts, to get that straightened out and paid back.
By law, it will be paid back. There is a statutory mechanism by which it will be paid back very soon.
All I'm saying, Senator Kent, and I'm just reflecting my viewers' sentiments, is that sometimes before we give money to other people, like Ziggy Wilf and these other people, maybe we can help our kids by paying back the money we've already borrowed from them. That's all. Don't take it the wrong way. I'm not lecturing. I don't know.
Yes, you are. But
I'm reflecting. I'm just reflecting.
I'm reflecting what I've heard from everybody throughout the system.
I appreciate it.
So to change topics slightly, we have a question from Nikki Hurdle, and she is wondering, do you support the ban the box measures being advocated in the legislature?
I do. I was on the bill.
We should explain to viewers that don't know what that is. Which one of you wants to articulate that?
Since you're a co-author.
Man the Box was typically job applications had a box on there that you would check and would usually typically ask, have you ever been convicted of a crime or a felony? And you'd have to check the box. Well, what that would do is typically the employers might see that and just throw it out. So the goal was, if we just removed that and say you can't have that on the form, then it might give some of these people a second chance at redemption to get a job. And the most important thing to getting ex-felons and inmates back into society is to get them a job. Yeah. So I agreed with that. There was some controversy on it, but it was a bipartisan bill. It did have bipartisan support, so I think it's very important. It does little harm to businesses. They can work with it. So that's something that I agreed with and Senator Kent did. So
Catherine from the Second Chance Coalition come and talk to you, Senator Chamberlain?
They were relentless, yeah. I signed the bill. I'm glad I had the opportunity. It was a good thing to do it. It was a good
Catherine Walker. Okay.
And I think this is a very good example of stakeholders coming together and working on something. Well, in the business community, they did have some concerns, and everybody worked together to get that to where everybody felt like it was workable. Because I think a lot of people agree that it's important to make sure that people.
Will it happen?
Well, what?
Will it happen this year?
Oh yeah, I think it will.
You think that the governor will sign it into law?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Fair enough. Well, listen, thanks to both of you and thanks to Nikki for a great question tonight. But really appreciate you taking time out to join Capital
Thank you. I hope I'm honing my skills.
Thank you very much.
Well, anytime we can be a practice ground for the big time, we like to.
Oh no,
we like to.
That's all right.
We can augment your skill set.
I tell people I'll go anywhere, any place, talk to anybody, anytime.
Yeah, no, you've been very accommodating, Senator.
But it's a pleasure.
And it was awfully nice to meet you for the first time.
You too.
Senator Kent, I didn't know you were from out in Woodbury, and so that's good. And
we're Washington County.
We share the same alma mater, so it's good to see some Metro State guys.
Thanks a lot. Oh, that's right.
Appreciate it.
Good seeing you, Senator Kent.
That's all we have time for tonight. We'd like to thank you for tuning in tonight. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at MinCap News and on Facebook at Minnesota Capitol Conversations. If you send us a good question like Nikki Hurdle did tonight, we'll ask it on the show as we do every week. For more political news and analysis from the Capitol, don't forget to tune in to KFAI 90.3 FM, broadcasting from Minneapolis' community radio. Every 7:40 a.m. on Wednesdays, where I talk for about 10 minutes on all the happenings up here. We had production assistance from Cliff Dahlberg and Catherine Laudenslager, who's our executive producer, who's been such for 2 years, but somehow I messed up her name. I'm Marty Owings, and for our co-host who couldn't be here tonight, Paul Gardner, thank you for joining us. We'll see you at the Capitol.